It felt like there was a bomb or something exploded.
I feel the three big bombs.
All of a sudden, it felt like an explosion, like the room sort of moved. So the walls felt like something like vibrating.
All of a sudden, I felt my bed moving and the building moving.
Hi guys, maybe you can imagine if you're living in New York and maybe you have lived in New York during the events of 9/11 in 2001 and you hear a big boom and your building is shaking. That might definitely scare you, because I have to be honest, I did not think that there would be earthquakes in New York. And as it seems, many people did not expect that, not even first responders. So what really happened? We will go into this in this video because it feels like it's rumbling all over the world, even in places that you would expect the least to have earthquakes. So before we go deeper into this, I have something to ask you guys. Could you leave this video a like to push it a little bit in the algorithm so that it could reach more people? That would really help my channel. Thank you. Thank you. And let's dive right in. So New York had an earthquake, magnitude 1.7. So what did really happen? What residents felt was like how they describe it, like small explosions, and those were felt from Astoria to Roosevelt Island on Tuesday. And for hours, confounded firefighters and Con Edison crews circled buildings just south of Roosevelt Island Bridge and tramway, and they did even pop open manholes to see manhole covers to see what's going on, but they found nothing. And it was quite a mystery for quite some time. And you can imagine that, you know, people and families that were living in this area or are living in this area, the theories started running wild. And one resident says, I got really scared. I thought it was in the building and I thought something blew up. And one guy says, he was in another room. I thought maybe he was under the bed making the bed shake. But then I realized this was more serious. And before you think anything else, he was talking about his dog, referring to the family dog. Another resident says, I thought it was like an earthquake or something because we were shaking. And yeah, and as it turns out, it was indeed an earthquake. And the US Geological Survey said they measured a 1.7 magnitude earthquake in Astoria around 5:45 a.m. So just minutes before 911 calls flooded dispatchers with reports of a boom and buildings rocking. So one resident says, it blew me out of bed. And my daughter called me and she thought her husband fell out of bed because it was so strong. And seismologists say low intensity micro earthquakes happen all the time and usually they're rarely felt. But the one in Astoria was at a shallow depth and only about 5 kilometers underground. So the rocks around in that area are strong and they carry the earthquake waves efficiently. So even small quakes can be felt in the eastern United States that wouldn't be felt in California, for example. The events that we have seen on Tuesday with the 1.7 magnitude earthquake were almost a replay of the events that happened in 2001 when a 2.6 magnitude earthquake hit New York and had first responders running around for hours. They were looking for an explosion. They were looking for a plane crash. But, you know, understandable. But after they looked for a couple of hours and couldn't find anything, someone said, maybe it was an earthquake. And so, yeah, it was. And thankfully, both incidents did not cause any injuries. That's really, really good. And really, guys, before they could confirm that it was actually an earthquake, it was quite the mystery, because there were a lot of 911 calls that were saying there was an explosion, and the residents of Roosevelt Island said they felt shaking. They heard the sounds of explosions, and that was causing a huge emergency response. But you can imagine, right? So the emergency crews received the 911 calls just shortly before 6 a.m., shortly after the earthquake happened. And the fire department crews responded, and they searched the area, and including several buildings, and they did not find a fire or a likely source that would explain all these reports of explosions. So they first listed the situation as unfounded, and they turned everything over to Con Edison, which has emergency crews looking into a possible source of the shaking. So it was all a little bit a mystery still at that time. But then after a while, the USGS was reporting that it was a magnitude 1.7 earthquake. But, even it took officials a while to specifically confirm that the earthquake was the source of all the concerns that residents had, like the explosion sounds and the booms. So they responded to reports of small explosions on Roosevelt Island early Tuesday morning. But then after that, they declared the scene under control at the beginning with no clear cause. But after a while, the mystery seemed to be solved thanks to the U.S. Geological Survey when they reported that there was an earthquake. And residents, both in Manhattan and Queens, called and said what they felt or heard sounded like small explosions coming from Main Street south of the Roosevelt Island tramway just before 6 a.m. So it's scary if you think, is there someone blew up a tram or what has happened, right? But within an hour, the situation resolved. But still at that time, the fire department, New York, crew said they could still not determine the cause of the loud boom. But I have to say, I haven't been in many earthquakes and not in big ones. I have spent time in California. I felt some minor shaking, but I didn't hear anything. But I have to say, a few years back in Canada on the West Coast, I heard a loud boom. It's like a plane breaking the sound barrier, and then I can say that something was really shaken. It felt like how your windows or how your house acts when a plane breaks the sound barrier. I didn't think it was an earthquake first. It was really when I read it in the news that it was an earthquake, I was aware that this was the earthquake causing that sound. But it was scary that the earth causes this huge sound. So I fully understand the residents of New York that they were really, really scared. So that large firefighting effort was really justified. There were like 60 fire and medical personnel out there. One other resident said, I heard it was like a big boom and then the room shook. So Con Ed reported that there were no power outages caused by the earthquakes. They did have then emergency crews on the scene investigating. And local officials have not confirmed that the earthquake in Queens was in fact the cause of the reported shaking and explosion sounds. But after a while, this has all changed. And the chief of staff of Mayor Eric Adams said that the mayor's office was waiting to get more confirmation after the USGS announced that an earthquake occurred, but she said they did not feel the earthquake. So she said, I was living in California for the past 5 years and I'm used to the earthquakes, and I come here and I was like, wait, what? I was like, that's a new one to wake up. Yeah, I understand that. So experts are saying the New York earthquake, and that's important, was not related to the recent massive earthquake in Japan. Because honestly, guys, if you follow my channel, I have reported about Japan, but what I'm reporting at the moment mainly is just what's going on in Iceland, the volcanic eruptions and the earthquake swarms that happen in Iceland. And Iceland is lying on the North Atlantic ridge. So that means two continents are, I wouldn't say meeting there, they're moving away from each other, and Iceland lies right on top of this. And so this is a very, very long ridge. And not only in Iceland have we seen the earthquake swarms, also 1,000 kilometers south of Iceland, but on the same ridge, we have seen two earthquakes over 5 magnitude just shortly a few days ago. So are these two plates moving away from each other, causing earthquakes everywhere along that rift? Because all of a sudden in Iceland, everything seems to be waking up. Not only where we had the current eruption, like other volcanoes, Barrabunga, Faragalsfjall, they're having land rises, they seem to be waking up. The Campi Flegrei, the supervolcano in Italy near Naples with millions of people, that caldera is rising again. Experts are saying it might erupt. I have a video about that as well. You should get educated about that if you live in Europe, because that can have an effect on the whole world. But also, see Japan. That was like New Year's Day. Magnitude over 7.4, some say 7.6, with a lot of damage and unfortunately loss of lives. So, but I want to tell you also in the US, there are more areas that could have an earthquake than you might think, because everyone is just thinking about probably California and the fault there, and then maybe Yellowstone, but that's about it. A few people, at least that's my experience, know about the Cascadia Fault on the west coast. That will cause a big one, like a 9 or 10. And the Cascadia Fault runs from northern California, along the Oregon coast, along the Washington coast, along the Canadian coast. So that thing, experts are saying, will rip open and destroy the Pacific Northwest. Cities like Vancouver, Canada, Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, Portland, all these cities, it'll be an absolute catastrophe. And many people live there and they don't even know that. I see people in my comments that say, well, how can you live in Iceland? How can you live on a volcano? And I'm thinking, some of you guys might live in the Seattle area where there's a lot of volcanoes and where there's the big one. And there's a lot of dense population in areas where it's the ring of fire, where their volcanic lava might flow into. Mount Rainier, there are areas where people build and lava flow will run through there. So my advice that I can give you guys, wherever you live, look up what natural disasters could happen there. Tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, whatever. But one thing I want to say, as it is with earthquakes and nature, the science is not that far that we can't really predict earthquakes that good. Even in Iceland, there is little to no warning if there's another volcanic eruption, for example. So you can never say never. There might be a region that, since it has been settled, never felt earthquakes, and then boom, all of a sudden something happens. Scientists can still discover new fault lines. And I just want to give you an example. So there was a major earthquake that occurred in the central United States hundreds of years ago, and that was the 1811 to 1812 New Madrid earthquake swarm. And these earthquakes were among the most powerful in the continental United States, with magnitudes estimated between 7 and 8, and they significantly affected the region, and particularly around New Madrid, Missouri. And the quakes caused extensive changes to the landscape, including uplifts and subsidence that temporarily reversed the flow of the Mississippi River. And the earthquake series started in 1811 with major shocks until February 7th. And they were felt as far as Charleston, South Carolina, and New Orleans, Louisiana. And they caused structural damage in distant cities like St. Louis, Missouri, and Cincinnati, Ohio. So this seismic event's impact was not only immediate, but also contributed to a deeper understanding of earthquake risk in regions far from tectonic plate boundaries. And the New Madrid seismic zone remains a significant area of study for understanding intraplate earthquakes, which occur in the central portions of tectonic plates rather than their edges, because what the normal people always think is like on the edges of tectonic plates and where fault lines are, we have the earthquakes. So you'd think, oh, I'm pretty safe if I live somewhere in the middle of the United States. Well, you could be wrong. So that's why I'm always saying, be informed where you live. Know the natural hazards that can occur and prepare yourself. Be it a tornado, a hurricane, an earthquake, volcanic eruption, whatever. Just prepare yourself a little or know your area, because I know a lot of people on the West Coast, for example, that live in cities like Vancouver, Portland, Seattle. They don't know about the Cascadia fault, about the big one. They don't know that they could any second face a 9.0 magnitude or even a 10 earthquake. So if you don't know that, when it actually happened, you might not be prepared, because let's be honest, if something like this happens on the West Coast, they're not prepared at all. And it might take weeks or months till first responders can even reach the area to bring food. I don't want to do fear-mongering or paint an end-of-day scenario. This is a real threat. And this can also come with a tsunami evacuation routes everywhere. A lot is going on, and a lot is going on also in the US. If you look at that map where there's all these earthquakes happening. So maybe we should not only focus on the VIP areas like Yellowstone and California, San Francisco. Look at the areas. There's many other areas. But right now they're saying the New York incident is not related. And the experts are saying there are the fault lines on the East Coast, but the New York residents have nothing to fear. Stephen Holler, he's an associate professor of physics and engineering at Fordham University. He said, I wouldn't worry about it too much. The East Coast has been geologically stable for millions of years. But look at Iceland. The area where we have all the volcanic action and earthquakes right now has been dormant for 800 years. So during the time when people started settling in that area, it has actually been dormant. So it has been normal for them. Now scientists are saying people might get to know the real Iceland because it's waking up and it could remain active for 300 years. So you never know. I don't expect it for New York, but you never know. So there are fault lines, that's what they're saying, across the city, and one of them released pressure, but there's no cause for alarm. That's what they're saying. So that's the news I have about that, guys. If you want to learn more about what is going on currently in the world, check out my channel, check out the stuff that's going on in Iceland. And I know many of my viewers are saying it's rumbling all across the world. Is that related? Is it all going off now? Is like Campi Flegrei in Italy going off? Is Iceland blowing up? Is Yellowstone blowing up? So I don't know about that, guys. I don't want to comment on that. It's just I'm observing and I'm reporting about it. And definitely there is something going on, and let's hope that everyone will be safe and stay safe. And guys, be prepared, just even if it's just a bug out bag and some food that can help in many situations, and have a plan in your head where you would evacuate should wherever you live the most likely scenario happen. because I know a lot of people that don't know where they live. They're not aware. Some of them even don't know that a tsunami could come or that a big one could come. That's my experience, especially in the West Coast area of Canada. When you're in like Washington or Oregon on the coast, there's lots of tsunami evacuation route signs and stuff like this. So people are asking why, right? If the big one hits, there will be a tsunami as well. You probably have like 8 to 15 minutes after the shaking ends and the wave is coming. I don't know, maybe I'm a freak, but when I'm in Oregon or when I'm on the coast where I know the wave could come, I'm always aware of my surroundings. I really see where is higher ground, where could I go to if I'm on the beach, how quickly can I get out of there. So I'm not too paranoid about it, but I'm trying to be aware. So on that note, guys, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your supers again. Thanks for buying me a coffee on buymeacoffee.com. Thanks so much. Until the next one. Bye-bye.